Hey guys, Selwyn here from WynnStrength.com, bringing you my 5 tips to get to a 5-plate deadlift. So, here we go. So I recently accomplished a pretty big milestone, which was a 5-plate deadlift, which is approximately 495 pounds or 220-ish kilos. So something really cool. It took me a couple of years of actual goal setting to achieve. Obviously the first milestone was that 405 or the 4-plate deadlift. The 5-plate deadlift has just been reached, so now obviously the next goal will be a 6-plate deadlift. To go from a 3-plate deadlift to a 4-plate deadlift probably took me over a year, maybe 18 months, whereas going from a 4-plate deadlift to a 5-plate deadlift probably took me a lot less than a year, so we're looking at like 8 months. So I think there's a definite change in how people's strengths develop, because strength development is not linear. So here are some tips that I thought would help other people that haven't quite hit the 5-plate deadlift yet get to that goal. I personally think that almost anybody can reach a 5-plate deadlift given enough time, hard work, and consistency. I don't think it's out of the realm for strength development for a lot of people. So I think take some tips down, and if you're not quite there yet, apply them to your own training and see how far you can get, if not beat that 5-plate deadlift. So tip number 1 is technique. I think focusing on technique is one of the key things that helped me go from a 3-plate deadlift to a 4-plate and subsequently a 5-plate deadlift. And we're talking about a span of probably 3 years of technique refinement. And from what I can see, it's just going to be a continual process of me improving that deadlift technique. I don't think I have a fantastic deadlift technique. I think I have a solid and good deadlift technique. But just like anything that we try to do, there's always room for improvement. And I think the powerlifting movements and any weightlifting movements are very much the case with that. We can always look for something better to improve upon. Now, this video isn't about me telling you how to deadlift, because there are far more superior people to tell you about that. I'll leave some links below, but check out people like Wesley Smith, Jordan Feigenbaum, Sebastian Oreb, Duffen, Mark Bell. These are just 5 people, but there are a lot more people out there that can highlight exactly how to do a deadlift correctly. And what the funny thing is, they're all strong deadlifters, and they all have little nuances about how they like to teach deadlift and how they do perform the deadlift themselves. So you're going to find a lot of different techniques available out there. And just like with anything in life, there's no right answer. So the reason I don't want to teach technique is because there's a lot of technical experts out there, and each individual person can benefit from learning from these different people, because not one technique is the best in general. They're all great because they're all world-class deadlifters. So with that being said, watch all of these people and study their techniques, listen to what they have to say and learn from them, and then try them out and see what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And what I've personally experienced is that I've watched a lot of videos, I've read a lot of things about the deadlift, and I've implemented little things here and there, and I've created my own kind of technique that's superior for me right now, which might not be superior for me next year, but at least for right now, to get me to that 5-plate deadlift, it helped a lot. And it's just that continual refinement, continual improvement of technique mastery. And I think you shouldn't ever think that you have a perfect deadlift, because once you do that, you're going to stop learning, and I don't think you'll advance as quickly, because there's 2 sides of the coin here. There's technique and then there's strength. And I think once you stop developing one or the other, you're going to stall out, because you're like fighting with one arm tied behind your back. So always remember to learn more and always adapt and adjust along the way, because that's how you'll be able to get from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-plate deadlift and beyond. Because what'll help you get from no deadlift to a 1-plate deadlift is going to be different from that first plate to that 2nd plate, and so on and so forth, because they're going to be different strategies, techniques, and tactics to get you there. And as you get stronger and you get bigger and you get better, you're going to have to refine things because your body changes, the way your muscular patterns work, it's going to change. You're going to alter that. You're going to have different body mechanics if you put on weight or if you lose weight, because deadlifting at 185 pounds is a whole lot different to deadlifting at 210 pounds. Yes, obviously you're still picking a weight from the floor up and standing up with it, but there's little tiny things here that you need to change along the way, and I think that's where you need to constantly be looking at your technique and reassessing and just changing it ever so slightly and giving those changes time to adapt, giving your body time to adapt to those changes. So I wouldn't try a technique today and then, oh, my deadlift didn't go up 50 pounds, I need to try a new technique. I would give these techniques a month, 2 months, and I think this slower approach to training is going to help you because you're not going to be rushing towards the end result. So moving on to tip number 2, which is to increase the frequency of deadlifts. I think what's helped me get better at deadlifting is to do more deadlifts. And I think that goes with anything in life. If I want to get better at driving, I need to drive more. I can't drive once a year and expect to be a world-class driver if I've just driven once in my life. Same thing with the deadlift. I think once per week is good enough for a lot of beginners. If you're not deadlifting your own body weight yet, once a week is probably fine. But even then, I would suggest looking at how you can increase your deadlift frequency over the week. And this doesn't mean you should be doing 1 rep maxes every day. Obviously, that's not the case. Or you shouldn't just be doing bar weight deadlifts unless that's an 80% working rep for you. I think you need to find some coaching and some programming and some templates out there that explain how you can increase deadlifting frequency to at least twice a week. What I've noticed is to get to that 405 deadlift, I started to increase deadlifting frequency, and then as I went from 405 to 495, I increased my deadlifting even more. So I increased my deadlifting even more to go from 405 to 495. And I think that is what's necessary in order to drive those adaptations and drive that stress in order to build more muscle and strength. And the more you're exposed to a movement pattern, the better you're going to get at it. Look at any professional athlete, look at anybody that's good at anything. They don't get better by doing it once and then expecting to be better at it the next time they hit that. They're doing it almost every day. Now, we're dealing with physiological adaptations here, so there's limits to how much you can stress the body. You need to get a good rest to stress balance, this and that, and that's where a good coach, a good program, a good template is going to help you out. But with that in mind, most of the good templates and most of the good strategies to get you to a better deadlift is to increase your deadlift frequency, whether that be from 1 to twice a week or 2 times to 3 times a week, or you get a longer cycle, so now you're doing it maybe 6 times every 10 days. So you're doing these strategies in order to play with intensity and frequency and volume, so you're increasing your tonnage across the overall course of the week, as well as you're increasing those attempts at higher intensities, because it's between these two that you need to focus your efforts. Not only that, you need to practice what you want to get good at. If you're a powerlifter, obviously you're competing in a sport that requires execution of a 1 repetition maximum. So if that's what you want to do, you need to practice doing 1 rep maxes, because lifting a weight 1 time versus 10 times are two very different movements, as it were, or 2 very different things that your body has to accomplish. Being able to exert all of your effort into 1 rep is a lot different than spreading that out over 10 reps. Strength is specific, so you really need to focus on the rep range that you want to be good at. If you want to be good at heavy singles, you need to practice heavy singles. There's no way that you can be really good at 10 rep maxes and then translate that over to a 1 rep max in a great efficient manner, because it's just not how the body works. It's like expecting me to be good at throwing a shot put and then I can translate it over to throwing a baseball really well. So I think that brings us nicely to our 3rd tip, which is to use multiple deadlift accessory lifts. When I say you want to increase your deadlift frequency or exposure over the course of a week, I'm not saying to deadlift, obviously, the same way every single time. You want to look at increasing the amount of variation you have in the deadlift while still being a deadlift, if this makes sense. So for example, look at tempo deadlifts, pause deadlifts, deficit deadlifts, varying the grip on the deadlift. With that being said, I found the deadlifts that helped me the most, or the accessory deadlift that helped me the most, were the ones that increase the difficulty of the movement without having me increase the weight of the movement. So I wasn't a big fan of the rack pulls or block pulls where I could really overload the weight. I was more of a fan of the pause deadlifts, the tempo deadlifts, and the deficit deadlifts. Those are my three most favorite hated deadlift accessories, because I didn't have to use a lot of weight to to stress the body, but they were very difficult, and I really didn't like doing the movements, but I think they were some of the greatest movements that helped me bring up that deadlift by 90 pounds. Something else to look at are also the Romanian deadlifts and the stiff leg deadlifts. They're kind of a good higher rep deadlift that I like to use to build in some volume and get some extra tonnage in there, especially to tax the posterior chain without having to overload the muscle. I think to get to that 495 deadlift, I think what helped me was being able to increase that exposure to the deadlift without having to stress the body too much with that much intensity, because then I would have had to increase my rest periods in between sets. So I was kind of sprinkling in deadlift exposure over the course of a week rather than doing really high loads once a week. So instead of doing 10 heavy singles in a day or 10 heavy singles over the course of 5 days, where you could do 2, 2, 2, 2, rather than one day where you've taxed the body completely. So you're kind of increasing that exposure range while stressing the body a little bit, but not too much to the point of over fatigue or over stress. Moving on to the fourth tip would be to get stronger everywhere else. I think this sounds obvious, but I think it goes without saying that in order to get stronger at a full body lift, your full body has to get stronger. So yes, I hit that milestone 5-plate deadlift, but along with that, I've experienced PRs in almost all of my other lifts: the squat, the bench, the overhead press, even rows and pull-ups and weighted pull-ups. So I'm able to do more weight and more reps at a given weight for all of those lifts. So I think obviously the body is a unit, and in order to get stronger, you have to strengthen the entire unit. It'll be really hard for me to have a strong deadlift and a 1-plate squat. I think it'd be really difficult to do that, because it'll be hard to. I don't know of anyone that just trains deadlift or one lift exclusively without training any other lift and being a successful lifter. I think you have to strengthen all parts of the body, because it becomes a synergistic unit where you get stronger. Getting stronger in one of those lifts helps get stronger in all of the other lifts, because you're training the body as a whole, and because obviously the body moves in unison, and these are all compound movements. I think you need to get the body stronger as a whole unit, because I think it'll be really hard to get to an advanced level of lifting by ignoring any other lift. So I think it'll be really difficult to hit a 5 or 6-plate deadlift while never squatting in your entire life. I think yes, possible, but why would you want to do that? And we're talking about the most efficient, effective way to achieve a goal. And I think by doing that, in order to do that, you need to strengthen the body as a unit, not just in individual segments or focusing on individual lifts. Yes, you could be a great deadlifter, but I think that also means you're a good squatter, bench presser, and overhead presser. I think when you strengthen all of them in a combined effort, you're going to get better at all of them together. Even if you do want to focus strictly on the deadlift, you can't ignore all the other lifts, because I don't think the body works as effectively and efficiently in that methodology. Finally, we'll move on to the fifth tip, which is more mental and more motivational. I think it's just to stick with it. I think developing strength takes a lot of time. A lot of the people you see out there have been training for years, if not decades, if not multiple decades. Everyone that's gotten stronger is determined and gritty into what they're trying to achieve. You can't get stronger overnight, and you can't get stronger in a week. I mean, you can, but you're ideally looking to get stronger over the course of 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, because that's where true strength starts to come out. Look at a lot of the strongmen, successful powerlifters, successful bodybuilders even. They've all been there for a long, long time. They all started really young, and they've stuck with it to whatever age they are now. But a lot of them have just been there, working day in, day out, grinding day in, day out. And yes, we're going to hit plateaus because that's just part of it. That's part of any development of skill, of force, of whatever you have to do. But you need to put in the work consistently over a really long period of time. These changes won't happen. It took me a long time to get to the point where I was even thinking of doing a 4 or 5 deadlift, and now I'm thinking of performing. Now that I've achieved the 495 deadlift, I'm thinking of the 6-plate deadlift, but this has taken years to achieve. And everyone's different. You might have a friend that's been able to deadlift 5 plates in high school, and that's awesome. But if that's not you, then you need to focus on how you're going to achieve these goals, because your buddy isn't you. So obviously, his body is different to yours. There's different genetic features. There's different backgrounds and everything about that. Everyone's an individual. Everyone's going to take their time to get there. But if you can set that goal and you can achieve it, doesn't matter how long you get there, as long as you achieve it. And the thing with plateaus is they're only plateaus if you stop working at it. I thought I was stuck at 385 pounds for a really long time, but I just kept chipping away at it, kept working at it, and then eventually 4 or 5 came up. There were days where just doing 365 for reps doing 365 for a single was crazy. That was impossible at one point in my life. Obviously, as I haven't done it before. But now I can rep out 405 pounds. So we're constantly building and we're constantly developing, even though the results might not show up immediately, and they won't. The work is the groundwork is building there. It's like when you plant a plant. You put a seed in the ground, it's doing stuff under the surface. You're not seeing any of this, and if you do try and see it, you're going to kill the plant. But you do need to continually water it. You do need to continually take care of it, fertilize it, make sure it gets the correct environment, the correct amount of sun, and eventually it'll sprout, comes up out of the top of the out of the ground, and then eventually that turns into a plant. But the plant or the flower won't grow unless you've nurtured it while it was under the ground, unseen. Your efforts will be unseen for a long amount of period of time, because you're building that root system. You're developing that base layer of strength that'll help you grow into a really strong person. So stick with it, don't give up, because strength takes time. Even though everyone will get setbacks, everyone will get injured, everyone will not work out for periods of time. There'll be months, there might be years where you stopped working out. But if you come back to it, what is a year in the space of 30 years? If your goal is to keep lifting until you die, then a year off doesn't matter, because you'll be coming back at it the next year. So that's going to wrap it up for today. I hope these 5 tips help you. Obviously nothing concrete, that's kind of more a high-level bird's eye view as to how to attack the deadlift. If you have any questions, leave them below in the comments, and I'll try and help you out to get to that 5-plate milestone. If not, please like and subscribe. I thank you for watching. This has been Selman from WynnStrength, and remember, a better life through strength.